Hi everyone, welcome back to Hooked on Onyx, the segment where we talk about coffee things with coffee people. Today we have a very special person. It's Jeremy. Welcome.
Thank you.
First off, can you introduce yourself and also a little bit about what your role here is at Onyx?
Sure. So my name is Jeremy Teff. I own a creative agency called Hickory Design Company. I also work for Onyx in their creative department. I'm a graphic designer, so I work on packaging, marketing materials, basically anything that is put out through Onyx Coffee Lab in a design/marketing kind of world. We got a small team, really great team of people with a lot of great ideas, so can't take credit for everything, but I could definitely say I put out a lot of work for Onyx over the last probably 10 years.
I was going to ask, how long have you been at Onyx?
Yeah, so my history with Onyx goes way back, probably to their first cafe when they just opened, when they first purchased it, about probably 10 years ago now. I think Onyx has been 10 years,
I was going to say that's the lifespan.
The beginning of Onyx, really. And I knew John from high school. We were in high school together. Went to school together, which is weird because we had no idea what each other were doing after high school. And then we kind of randomly met through a job that I had taken about 10 years ago, and he was, had just purchased their first cafe, him and Andrea, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I run a coffee shop, and I was like, I'm a graphic designer, and then we kind of came together at that point, so it was a interesting story, pretty cool.
Kind of full circle there.
Full circle.
So nowadays, Onyx I feel like is very associated with design. That's very much one of the pillars here. How did that kind of start, and or what was the development of like the Onyx branding as we see it now today?
Sure. So I think John has always been focused on the design side of a brand, which I think is really important for any brand. Design's super important. I think that's something that kind of gets left out on some new brands, but from the start, he was always focused on, communicating with his audience about who Onyx was and what they wanted to be and where they were going. The branding really started 10 years ago, and like I said, we just kind of had this, like, how do we kind of make some noise in the coffee industry?
Yeah.
So we did things a bit different then. We were a little more edgy, probably, a little more tough, a little more grungy, kind of gritty. But that really was kind of their setup when they started, right? It was kind of boots on the ground, just get stuff done, and let's try to do something different. And that really reflects probably the first few years of Onyx's brand. Over time, we've kind of refined that and developed it. We haven't really lost all of the edge. We've just kind of, what I'd say is we've grown up to the brand. When we started, like, where we're at now is like, this is probably where Onyx grew up to be.
Sure.
Right? As opposed to where we started.
Yeah.
So it's just been an interesting journey to kind of see that develop over the last 10 years.
Now, I asked this to John when I talked with him last. When and where did the phrase "never settle for good enough" kind of come into play? Because that is such a big component nowadays.
Yeah, I would say that what's amazing is that really came into play very early in Onyx's brand and design kind of mantra, I would say, as we had our first meeting and we were looking for a tagline and we were talking about what this brand's going to be, and we kind of came up with this like not settle, and we were thinking on it, and it really just became like, people always just say, well, it's good enough, it's good enough for us, it's good enough for them. And I think that never settle for good enough just came out of that first meeting, and has really been the driver for the brand and everything we kind of check the brand against going forward. I think that's whether it's in design or with coffee or with tea or chocolate or whatever they're doing, and when they open a new cafe, it's always just like, how do we go to the next level? That's right. Yeah. How do we just not, we're not checking boxes here, we're trying to add boxes, which I think is really important. So really that kind of came out of that first initial brand meeting.
And it stuck.
And it stuck
really well.
It's been there a long time.
Now, it's funny you say boxes, because that was one of my questions. And I think it's a pretty common question that I've seen online is like, how did the Onyx boxes come to be? Like, because they used to be bags. Right. And then it was a pretty big move to what is now the packaging. It's beautiful packaging.
So I think we overhauled the entire packaging probably 3 or 4 years ago now, maybe. And we had bags, and we did the square bottom bags, which were not common when we first started. They were kind of just coming into their own, and then we got to the point to where it was like, okay, what is our next packaging
like we've done
project?
The bags,
like we've done, everybody does bags. What can we do next to kind of really one, develop the experience for our customers, you know, and we're selling a premium product and we need to feel premium. So how do we kind of elevate our packaging to reflect that? You know, again, it was a brainstorm session, and I give a lot of credit to John and Andrea and really the entire creative team. We sat down on those boxes for a long time and kind of figured out. I mean, first it was like a combination of like half box, half bag, or you know, a bag with
like a centaur.
Yeah,
like coffee
it was
packaging.
a really, you know, it was a lot of iteration on that to get to where it is now. But really, it was just all going back to the never settle for good enough. Is like, how do we elevate our packaging to reflect the product inside of it? And I think that's something Onyx is always kind of pushing for. Is like, how do we elevate it in order to reflect what we stand for or the product that we're offering?
Are there any particular moments or like touch points throughout the last 10 years that really stand out to you in the design and like marketing of Onyx?
Yeah, I would say probably the most, you know, the overhaul about 5 or 6, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, we'll say that.
Yeah.
It's really probably the point in my mind that sticks out. It's when we kind of grew up. You know, I talked about that. It's we kept all of our basic, you know, fundamental values of, you know, not settling, being excellent, you know, striving for transparency, and we really looked at that and those qualities and those specifications and how we were going to elevate the Onyx brand. You know, whether it was through the website and offering more transparency, or you know, going back and researching sustainable products for packaging. I think everything that point in probably my design career here at Onyx was probably the most pivotal one.
Yeah.
Just because we invested money, we invested a lot of time into really getting things right, and really kind of checking everything against those kind of values we set back 10 years ago, right? It's like, how do we go back and like, this is where we were and this is what we want to become. And, you know, I would say that's kind of when we became, you know, really focused on
taking it to that next level and focus. Yeah.
That's right.
Do you have like personally any design projects you've worked on, whether it be like any of the packaging or like even like merch pieces that are like some of your favorites?
Sure. You know, as far as the packaging goes, like I feel like we have a new project every week. They all become your favorite for a short amount of time. The boxes were really great to work on over time. I really love working on the advent calendars with the graphic, with the team.
The board game now too.
You know, as far as the merch stuff goes, really Taylor Morgan is the guy that takes care of most of the merch ideas. He does an awesome job with that. So can't take a bunch of credit. Maybe the early stuff, but all the most recent things, Taylor's done a really great job with the merch. As far as just packaging, I think the advent calendar is probably one of the funnest ones to work on.
Yeah.
It's also one of the most stressful because it's like, what are we going to do this year to kind of...
How do we take it to the next level?
Right, and that really is an entire team effort, you know. You know, we all work on that box, and how do we, you know, present something to people that look forward to it every year?
Sure.
And how do we just kind of elevate it? So I think this year's is probably my favorite,
awesome.
right?
It is pretty awesome.
You know, we took a current existing packaging item that we had for shippers and we converted it to a board game and, you know, 24 coffees and, you know, it's
you get the little pieces, and the spinner and everything.
Absolutely. So I think Advent is always a fun one. And then really anything that's new. And again, you know, whether that's new tea packaging or a new product offering, we definitely have something going on every week, it seems like. So I would say just whatever's on the table at the time is probably the most important and really the most fun because usually it's new.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun, very educational. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's watching and drinking Onyx coffee.
Yes.
You know, it keeps me in a job.
All of us
I
employed.
appreciate it. Keep buying the packaging and the merchandise. That's amazing.
And keep out eyes for new things.
That's right.
There's always new things coming. I think that's the moral of the story.
Lots of exciting new things on the horizon. So we are definitely not done yet, kind of pushing that envelope.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining us.